Hello and very good evening to all our viewers. This is WION Wallet. I am Sumit Chaturvedi. Let's go straight to our top headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi reconfirms $10 billion credit support to Africa over the next 5 years at the opening ceremony of African Development Bank being held in Gujarat today. Hong Kong's flagship airline Cathay Pacific would cut 600 staff as part of its biggest shakeup in the last 2 decades. In a first after taking charge as US President, Donald Trump could go for $3.6 trillion in spending cuts. And days after US auto major General Motors announced stopping of car sales in India, dealers are afraid they may have to suffer losses worth thousands of crores of rupees. Now straight to our global story. The global handset maker Nokia said it has settled its patent dispute with Apple and also signed a business collaboration deal with the US company Apple. Nokia said it would receive an upfront cash payment and additional revenues from Apple, but did not specify the details of the patent deal. Revenues from the agreement as well as a non-recurring catch-up revenue will start running from this quarter. Under the business agreement, Nokia would provide network infrastructure, products and services to Apple, while Apple would resume carrying Nokia's digital health products in its retail and online stores. Now, Nokia's shares opened 5% higher on the news in the early Helsinki trade. Now, police in Hong Kong has launched a fresh crackdown on Uber, arresting 21 drivers suspected of working for the ride-hailing giant in the Asian Financial Centre. It's the latest regulatory headache for Uber, which is already fighting a similar case in Hong Kong. The drivers were arrested in an undercover operation on suspicion of carrying passengers for hire and not having third-party insurance for their cars. Now, Hong Kong police are telling people using smartphones to arrange rides to make sure that drivers have the proper vehicle hire permits. In March, a Hong Kong court convicted and fined 5 Uber drivers on the same charges after they were arrested by undercover police. The company said it would stand by the 5 drivers as they have launched an appeal. In 2015, police searched Uber's Hong Kong offices and confiscated computers and documents. Now coming to US, where President Donald Trump would dramatically reduce the US government's role in society with $3.6 trillion worth in spending cuts over the next 10 years in a budget plan that shrinks the safety net for the poor, recent college graduates and farmers. Trump's proposal claims to balance the budget within a decade, but it relies on a tax plan for which the administration has provided precious little detail, the elimination of programs backed by many Republican lawmakers, and heavy use of accounting gimmicks. Now, Trump's fiscal 2018 budget proposal has already been declared dead on arrival by many of his Republican allies in Congress. And US plans to trim the national debt include selling off half of nation's emergency oil stockpile. The move is part of a broad series of changes proposed by President Donald Trump to the federal government's role in energy markets. Now, Trump's first complete budget proposal would raise $500 million in fiscal year 2018 by draining the strategic petroleum reserve and as much as $16.6 billion in oil sales over the next decade. The proposal also seeks to boost government revenues by allowing oil drilling in the Alaska National Wildlife Refuge, ending the practice of sharing oil royalties with states. Now to some aviation news. Hong Kong's flagship airline Cathay Pacific would cut 600 staff, including a quarter of its management, as part of its biggest shakeup in 2 decades to repair its bottom line. In March, the company posted its first annual net loss in 8 years, citing intense competition as lower-cost airlines, particularly from mainland China, eat into its market share. It pledged the time to slash costs by 30% after its $74 million net loss in 2016 reversed a $773 million profit in previous year. No pilots, cabin crew or frontline employees would be affected, but they would be asked to deliver greater efficiencies and productivity improvement. Now, intense competition has continued to hit premium carriers despite an expansion of international air travel in the region as mainland Chinese airlines aggressively scale up long-haul routes. Now, Cathay announced a major restructuring program in January after posting its first annual net loss since 2008. German economy is firing on all cylinders, from consumer spending to investment to exports. All parts of the economy helped to push growth to 0.6% in the first quarter, the fastest in a year, and momentum is set to remain strong too. Business confidence, which is going to rise in May to the highest level in almost 6 years. Construction surged the most in 3 years as mild winter weather bolstered activity. Spending on new equipment increased at the fastest pace since the end of 2015. Well, Germany is Europe's largest economy and it has been key to euro area's recovery too. Coming to India, where Petroleum Minister of India Dharmendra Pradhan has told OPEC leaders in Vienna that India will no longer accept the Asian premium on oil imports since New Delhi has always honoured its commitments and made timely payments. Pradhan pointed out that for a long time, OPEC, which is Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, have subsidized Western buyers at the cost of Asian buyers, and said India is the only big economy where the demand for crude oil continues to rise each year. Now, given the Asian market's importance for OPEC, particularly the fast-growing Indian market, which stood by grouping as a reliable and continued customer, now Pradhan demanded an Asian dividend rather than paying an Asian premium. Oil Minister of India Pradhan met OPEC Secretary General and highlighted the importance of India-OPEC engagement. He also discussed on the effects of production cut of 1.8 million barrels per day by OPEC and non-OPEC countries on the global oil market. And days after US auto major General Motors announced stopping of car sales in India, company's dealers are distraught. They warn of job losses around 50,000 and potential losses of thousands of crores of rupees, mostly from around 18,000 General Motors vehicles in stock that will probably not find any buyers now. Equally distraught are customers who have already bought GM India cars. Many of the customers are now rushing to either sell their cars in the second-hand market or exchange the cars for the new ones. The suddenness of the announcement has taken everyone by surprise. According to a communication from GM to its dealers, company's service arrangement with the latter will end on 31st of December. Dealers say they are staring at losses worth thousands of crores of rupees. And staying with India, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi has affirmed his commitment for a $10 billion credit support to the continent of Africa. While saying that India is proud of its ties with African nations, Modi said India is fifth largest country to invest into the continent. India has invested $54 billion towards job creation in Africa. Trade between Africa and India has multiplied in the last 15 years and doubled in the last 5 years to $72 billion between 2014 and 15. To talk on this story more, I'm joined by my colleague Inga Meslini. Well, Inga, thanks for joining us. First of all, how do you see this impacting overall India and Africa relations? What does this $10 billion credit line or support means for African nations too?
All right, thank you so much, Smith. Now, this $10 billion is provided by India towards the African Development Bank. Now, if you may recall, India and Africa share similar problems that hinder growth. Now, such problems include agriculture, which is well practiced in India and as well as in Africa. And if you may recall, there was those protests from Tamil Nadu farmers, which were bizarre and Kenya especially as well, in the northern Kenya part in East Africa, is experiencing drought, whereby herdsmen now are heavily armed, and they go to nature reserves because they're seeking grazing land. So now this $10 billion was announced in 2015. So in his speech today, Prime Minister Narendra Modi sort of reaffirmed India's commitment in helping Africa. So it was not exactly announced today, but in his speech he sort of announced. So this meeting also served as a logic follow-up from the 2015 India-Africa summit, which was held in Delhi. So in his speech, he reaffirmed his commitment in helping Africa. And also, we should also watch out in terms of comparing India and China, because these two have different interests in Africa.
Absolutely.
First of all, India's approach towards Africa is that of providing support to the African continent. Although there are, there is heavy presence of Indian companies, Indian private sector businesses, of course, in Southern Africa, but its main priority is to give funds and support Africa in the areas of skill development as well as manufacturing. That is India's approach towards Africa. It's not just about expanding its territory in Africa. It is about providing support in Africa. So we cannot really compare the two nations' approach towards Africa. So that of China is of developing businesses, but India's approach is of providing funds and support in the African continent.
Well, Inga, this is happening days after China had its OBOR summit in Beijing, OBOR One Belt, One Road initiative, which is seeing around the world as a new economic diplomacy. So would you say that this is to counter China's OBOR, or where do we stand as far as China's OBOR and India and African partnership is concerned? Also, based on Prime Minister Modi's speech earlier today, he sort of made India's stance clear towards African growth. He didn't want to sort of follow the same strategies that China puts in place in Africa, because these two countries, like I said, they have different interests in Africa. So in his speech, Prime Minister Narendra Modi sort of reaffirmed his approach towards Africa and also made it clear. So it was a sort of a platform for him to show Africa exactly India's interest in Africa. Well, if we see the trade data over the last 15 years, it has gone 3 times. Over the last 5 years, it has doubled. What are the areas in which going forward India and Africa can cooperate together? Because if we see it from the point of view of China, it's connecting China's mainland to Europe all the way. A train has started from London to Beijing and many cities. So how do you see this? Where are the possibilities where India and China, India and Africa going forward can explore synergies?
Like, one such area is agriculture, first of all. If these two can sit down and analyze their approach towards developing the agricultural sector. And India plays a really important role towards African education and skills development. We have a lot of African young people who come to India to study, to gain rather skills, and then go back to Africa to execute the skills that they've learned from India. And also mining as well, and IT. Those are like key sectors that India and Africa can develop and move forward. And if they can focus more especially on agriculture, then the growth between these two countries, the growth in relations between these two countries will definitely blossom.
Well, let's hear what PM Modi had to say today at this Africa-Indian summit.
India extends lines of credit through India's Exim Bank. 152 credits have been extended to 44 countries for a total amount of nearly $8 billion.
Well, Inga, to continue with what we were discussing, India and Africa really have close partnership. What we have seen, what PM Modi started off with when he took charge, first he went to Japan, and Japan was the closest partner which India had. But we have not seen many success of, Japanese-India partnership so far, because Trump and, there's a different world after Trump has taken charge. So where do you think India and Africa can really work together? Because in Africa, as far as African countries are concerned, there could be economic partnership, but strategic partnership is difficult because both continents are really apart. So where do you think that India and Africa partnership will go from here?
Well, as you know that like the World Bank recently projected the growth, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, to increase. So if India maintains its support for Africa, and of course India is not losing in this relationship with Africa. It's not just providing funds for Africa. Like I said, there are businesses. Indian private sector is heavily present in Africa. So yes, in 2020, of course, based on their plans and strategies, yeah, we can see the two countries, the country and the continent of Africa blossoming in their relations.
And in post-Trump scenario across the globe, do you think India can expand in US as far as services sector is concerned? Because in Africa, the more what we see is mining, agriculture, all these things which are more things to do with labor and not service. Do you think Indian services can also expand it in Africa?
Yes, it can be expanded, especially now Africa does not really say anything much about America. Yes, there is a presence of America in Africa, but now the Asian countries have taken the lead in developing investment in Africa, like China, and India is head-on, obviously, with China in the continent. Now, the United States doesn't really play a big role in this, because Africa is opening its doors mostly to Asian countries, like India, for example.
All right, Inga, thank you so much for joining us and explaining us all these developments that took place today as far as Gujarat is concerned and PM's visit to Gujarat is concerned. With this, it's time for a short break on WION Wallet. After the break, we will continue with our coverage of markets, India and global. Stay tuned to WION. Well, thank you for staying with WION, and let's go to our market segment straight, where Indian markets have consolidated their position and they have ended in red. Sensex was down by 206 points in trade today, while Nifty 50 was also down by 52 points. It has ended below or closed below 9,400. On other Asian markets, Hang Seng was up by around 11 points, we can say that. But overall, Indian markets were down, where there was some negative news that came later on, and that led to some kind of fall in the Indian markets, we can say that. So clearly, a lot of tensions once again escalating throughout the world. That led to some kind of pressure around global markets, including India. To talk more on the market, we are joined by our guest for today, Ashish Kelkar. Well, good evening to you, Mr. Kelkar. First of all, definitely geopolitical tensions are increasing once again. Over there in UK, we saw a bomb blast in Manchester, and also in India and Pakistan, their tensions are escalating. So you think this will weigh on the stocks going forward for the next few days?
Good evening all. If we look at the charts are suggesting that there is a time correction but not the price correction. As discussed earlier in the show yesterday morning, that important level for the Nifty is 9360, and in today's session we have seen that this 9360 level is not breached. So definitely there will be an impact of these geopolitical situations, but it will not remain for next 2-3 days. It will be there for the 1.5 hours for the next trading day, that is tomorrow. But I believe that 9360 during the trading session, Nifty may go down below 9360, but it should close above 9360, because the charts are suggesting that there is a base building which is happening at these levels, 9360 and 9350 levels. So that level should not be breached and bullish momentum should continue.
And so what strategy should be followed by an investor in such kind of market?
Basically, I would advise for short-term traders, they should trade with low profile and strict stop losses. But for medium-term to long-term investors, it is a good time to invest with a trailing stop losses on a weekly closing basis, not a daily closing basis.
Okay, and going forward, any sector-specific stocks would you recommend?
Definitely. Yesterday we have discussed two sectors. One was, I think one was FMCG, and today I would be recommending two another sectors and a few stocks from these sectors. New sectors would be fertilizers. Now, if you look at fertilizer stocks, they have started clocking higher tops and higher bottoms on the chart. So definitely I would recommend those this sector. And out of this, from this sector, there are two stocks which I would recommend. The first one is RCF. Russia Chemical and Fertilizers. So this stock is looking very good. And the second one is Chambal Fertilizers. So these stocks will be very good stocks for investment, not for trading, but medium term to long term investment. These two stocks will generate a return of around 20-22% over the next 3 to 4 months. And the second sector which I am looking at is auto ancillary stocks. Auto ancillary stocks, they are performing well for the last 2 to 3 quarters. They are reaching new highs, and this would continue for the next two quarters. So from this sector, I have two stocks in my pocket. One is Gabriel. Gabriel is a company which supplies basically the shock absorber to various auto companies. So this stock is also making a very good price formation, which is going up and up and up. Currently, the stock is trading at around 130 odd levels. The target for this particular stock is 150, 155 odd levels. So definitely this will be a good return on investment. And the second stock is Exide Industries. Exide Industries is a stock which produces the batteries for the auto companies. This is also a very good stock. Currently the stock is trading at around 225 odd level. The target is 280.
And Mr. Kelkar, if we quickly touch upon the global markets, how do you see them panning out because of escalating tensions over there in Europe and especially UK?
If we look at the indices, the European indices, yes, they are in a little bit of pressure. Definitely, there will be a pressure, but this pressure, I think, would not sustain for more than a couple of weeks maximum. The price correction and type correction both would happen if we look at these European markets, but indices will definitely move not south but to north in the next 2 weeks.
All right, Mr. Kelkar, thanks for talking to us. We were talking to our guest for today, Ashish Kelkar, who gave us all the suggestions on the stocks one should buy and one should avoid. With this, it is time to wrap this edition of WION Wallet. For more news and updates, stay tuned to WION, and thanks for watching us.